and the kids, I understand they were here, I think, Friday night. And then over here, who's this? Oh, Anthony. Hey, good to see you. And he looked his face around here. I don't know who it was. And what is it? Des. Good to have you too. I'm glad y'all are here. I feel like maybe talking a little bit about history, maybe give a little history on Brother Liniger and I working together and the work in the Dominican Republic, sort of how all that happened. Here recently I gave y'all quite a bit of the history of this body and what all took place at the latter part of Brother William Souders' life, and then how the new experience came in 1953, and then what all took place and all the different ministers and all the things that happened that God in 2003 brought all that back together. So I'm trying to lay a little history. I think it's very important that at least these brethren in this church understand the history. We lose the history of this, we'll lose a tremendous amount of importance. So I'm trying my best, and I don't know how many years I've got left, but I'm trying to get all the fundamentals that I think are necessary planted as much as I can, as well as key doctrines and keys of the truths that God has restored among this ministry. So I hope God will help me to get that accomplished. It is not up to me. I mean, I don't. God don't have to have me to do it, but He has me, and I feel like that's what I need to do. But He'll get it done, however He decides to do it. Whatever I don't get done, He'll get it done some other way. I'm talking about that has to do with my ministry. But 1981, I started to work in Winters, Texas. I was in San Antonio, Texas when I got out of the Army in 1970. I was there in 67, 68, 69, and 70 in San Antonio. But I got out, and y'all have heard a lot of history about that and how that God introduced me to this group of people while I was in San Antonio. I don't remember exactly what year we moved to to Kerrville, but Sister Smith probably can get it the date figured out better, but it was probably like in 78, maybe 77 or 78. And I had a small work there and wound up moving. I was in the healthcare administration business, and so I had a man that hired me and contracted 3 nursing homes that he had bought. He wasn't licensed, able to run them, and he hired me and contracted me to run these nursing homes. One was in Rising Star, Texas, which was south of Cisco, about maybe an hour. The other was in Ballinger, Texas, which was about 2 hours, maybe 2.5, 2 hours south of Cisco, or 2 hours, 15 minutes or so. And then one in Seminole, Texas, which is way out on the west coast. I mean, not west coast, but western border of Texas. And so I had moved to Ballinger, Texas, and had put me in between the other two homes. And so I oversaw those homes and had administrators in each one of them. And then in 1980, the nursing home in Winters, Texas went up for sale, and I bought it. And I moved there, and I ran that nursing home. And I had the other three nursing homes, but the guy that owned them was a pharmacist. He didn't have a license to run them, but he felt like it was going to be a conflict of interest for me to own my own nursing home and run those other three. And so he wanted me to sell that nursing home in Winters to him, which I wouldn't do. And so, to make a long story short, he bought me out of the contract. And so I sold that contract back to him, and then I just had that nursing home in Winters. That's where I started. That's where I started my flying lessons and bought an airplane and started flying. But so I was there in Winters, and then I wound up starting a work there in Winters. Brother Patton was over me at the time. I wasn't under his. I didn't come up under Brother Patton, but he was a great leader, and I voluntarily submitted to him and worked with him. And but we were fixing to have a dedication service in that Winters church, and he was bringing a bus and a lot of people from Fort Worth and Cisco, and they were coming that coming weekend for that dedication service. And but that week I had a dream, which was a very confusing dream concerning what we were doing. And I dreamed that I was in. By the way, when I was in the Army, I was a physician's assistant. So I was in the medical field the whole time I was in the Army. So in this dream, I was in a hospital, and I was a doctor. I had on a white doctor's coat, and I was walking down this hallway, and an angel from heaven was right by my right side. And we were walking. It seemed like it was a very urgency. He was taking me somewhere. And I was walking with him, and we got down to the end of a hall, and there was a door. And he opened that door, and we walked in that door, and there was wounded people all in that room. Some of them even laying in the floor. In fact, there was a door across the room from us that led into another hallway, but we had to step over people, and it was a little difficult to get over to the other side of the room, and he opened that door, and we went through that door. It looked like those people, it seemed like to me in my dream, those people were waiting to see a doctor. When I got on the other side and we went in the next hallway, we didn't go very far, and we came to another. He opened that door, and when he opened that door, we went into this room, and that room the walls were lined with men. There were no women in that room. There were only men in there, and every one of them had injuries to their hands. And there was a big oak desk sitting right in the middle of the room. And the angel walked he walked me over to this oak desk. There was a stack of patient files on top of that desk. And I looked to my right, and there was another doctor. He had his back to us. He had on a white coat, and he was in one of those stands that had it was lights, and he was putting X-rays up, and he was reading those X-rays. And when we walked up to that desk, he turned around and looked at us, and that doctor was Brother Ray Liniger. And After he looked at us, he turned back around, went back to work on his x-rays. And the angel said to me, "This is your assignment." And he turned around and walked out of the room. And I picked up the top file, and I called the patient's name, and he came and sat down at this chair in front of this desk. This dream, I know it was in 1981, which was what, 40, how many years ago is that? 43 years ago. But it's as vivid in my mind as I had it last night. It's always been that vivid. So this guy came over and sat down at that desk, and I thought to myself, this is a crude operation here. I grew up in the Army. We had good equipment. We didn't have no oak desk in the floor. But anyway, this guy sat down at this oak desk, and I started unwrapping his right hand. This finger right here, the index finger, was cut off. I was being very careful opening it. And he said, "You don't have to be careful with that. It's been cut off a long time." He said a time, but I'm not positive of the time, but it was a long time. So, several years. So when I got it unwrapped, Brother Lineker came over there, and he took a hand in his hand, and he opened a drawer in that desk, and he got out some instruments, and he started working on that finger area. He worked on it a little while, and then he handed it to me. He said, "Finish this up," and he went back to his x-rays. So I finished it up, told the man what to do, and he left. I picked up a file and called the next file, patient's name, and he walked over to the desk, and I started unwrapping his right hand, and that hand was severed straight across the palm, and these 4 fingers were just dangling, just barely attached. And Brother Lineker came over to the desk, got out his utensils, and started working on that hand. Then he handed it to me, and he said, "Finish this work up." And he left. I never saw him again. He didn't go back to his x-rays. He left. And so I finished working on that hand, and that's when I woke up. I was working on it, and I was about finished with it, and that's when I woke up. Well, 10 years later, now the reason that dream was very uncomfortable for me is because I was working under the ministry of Brother Don Patton in Fort Worth. Ray Lineker was in Oklahoma. He had nothing to do with Texas. And for God to show me I'd be working with Ray Lineker was totally against anything I had seen in order. So I didn't understand it. It really was confusing to me. And it was 10 years later that Brother Lineker called me when we was fixing to have a meeting at the campground. And so I know you visitors, y'all think, what in the world is this guy talking about? But you just happen to be here, so you just get in on this. So, but I feel necessary to talk about this a little bit. So, in fact, I've been on the phone with the Dominicans this morning for about an hour. That's why I was late. And I felt like that phone call was very important. It had to do with all this. So, 10 years later, Brother Lineker, he called me and he said, "Brother Smith, I would like for you, can you pick me and Sister Dixie up at the Little Rock Airport and take us to the campground and bring us back when it's over?" And I said, "Yeah." So he said, "Okay." So I flew down here and got him and Sister Lineker. We flew to the campground. And then when meeting was over, we flew back to Little Rock. When I landed, he said, Brother Smith, would you park your plane and come inside? I want to talk to you. I said, okay. So we did, and we went inside, and in the FBO, which is the private area for private planes and private pilots, there's a little restaurant in there. And so we went in there and got us something to eat, sat down at the table and started to eat. And Brother Lineker, he looked at me and he said, Brother Smith, he said, God talked to me about you. I said, he did. I thought, wow, what's this fixing to be? And he said, God showed me that you and I are to work together in the ministry. And I looked at him and I said, what does that mean to you? I said, are you telling me you want to be over my church in Missouri? He said, no, Brother Smith. You built that work. I didn't have nothing to do with that. I'm not over that. He said, I said, well, then how's this going to work? What are we going to do? He said, I don't know exactly, but I know I know God talked to me. And I said, well, would it be okay if I pray about this? He said, yeah. And so anyway, I flew home. I flew home to Missouri, and that was in a fall campground meeting. The following June at the campground meeting, I was there, and Brother Lineker got up in that meeting. He got up to the pulpit to talk. And when he got up, there was a spirit covering that came down over me. I thought everybody in the building felt it. It was so powerful. And I didn't know what it was. I thought, man, something fixing to happen. I started looking around, and I realized nobody's feeling this but me. So I bowed my head and I said, God, what is this all about? What's going on? And the Lord spoke to me and said, I want you to help him. Well, I sat there and I thought, at this time, Ray Lineker was the chief leader in this body. And I was sitting there thinking, I thought, what could I do to help this guy? I don't know what I can do to help this guy. But it just seemed like that God was waiting for me to answer him. So finally I said, God, I don't know how to help him, but if you'll show me what you want me to do, I'll obey you. When I said that, it seemed like God accepted my answer, and that spirit lifted off of me. So it was an emphatic experience. So when that meeting was over, I was in the dining room eating and getting ready to leave and go back to the minister's house and go to my room and get my wife and go home. And when I was walking towards that back door on the side, that door on the side everybody goes out after you eat, when I was walking towards that, Brother Lineker was at that last table by that back wall by himself, which he never's by himself. There's always got people around him asking questions, talking to him. But he was all by himself eating. Anyway, I went up to that door and I put my hand on the door to push it open to go out. And I felt like the Lord said to me, go tell him what I told you. I stopped and hesitated a moment, and I thought, well, I'll tell him later. And I pushed the door, started to go out. And the Lord said, go tell him now. So I backed up and turned around and walked over there and sat down across the table from him. And I told him the experience I had when he got up. He looked at me and smiled real big, and he said, good, Brother Smith. This is good. And I said, well, we can talk later. I know everybody's getting ready to go, and I don't want to keep your time. I said, so I'm going to go ahead and get my wife and go home. I said, okay. We said goodbye, and I went home. And a few days later, the phone rang, and I answered it, and there's a voice on the other end that said, "Hello, Brother Smith, this is Ray E. Liniger." I said, "I would know that voice anywhere." He said, "Do you remember what God told you at the campground?" I said, "Of course I remember, Brother Liniger, but before you say another word, I want to say something." He said, "Okay." I said, "I promised God that I'd obey him. And that makes me very vulnerable. And I'm going to ask you not to ever take advantage of that." He said, "Brother Smith, I will never take advantage of you, I promise." I can almost never tell that without getting broke up about it, because he really never did. And I want to tell you something. That's amazing for a man in his position not to take advantage when you got that kind of advantage. He did several things. One time, Sister Smith and I was in Flint, Michigan with him on a Haitian trip in my plane. And we went to the motel room. They only had 2 rooms available. They had a suite and a regular room. And he absolutely refused to sleep only in that regular room, and me and Sister Smith sleep in the suite. We could not get him to change that. But he did things like that. The only thing he ever did was one time we were flying from Florida to Oklahoma in my plane, and there was a bad storm. There was a squall line of storms. And I knew we couldn't get through them. And he kept pushing me. He kept saying, "Brother Liniger, Brother Smith, I think we can get through this. You're an instrument pilot. I think we can just keep working on it." I had to fly way out over the Gulf, come around, try to get around that storm. Finally, I got somewhere in Georgia. And the storm was so bad that I asked the center, you're talking to someone in the center, these flight directors. I was talking, it's called center. And I was talking to center, and I asked this guy, I said, "Can you give me a better route to go to Oklahoma?" I said, "I need to get to Oklahoma." He said, "Do you know what the weather is?" I said, "Yeah, I know pretty much." And he said, "Well, here's the best routing I can give you. But if I was you, I'd land that plane and wait till this squall line's over." I said, "Okay. Well, let me take that heading." And he said, "Good luck." And so I looked up ahead, and there's a big black cloud in front of me, and I thought, I'm just going to fly right into that cloud. It'll help Brother Liniger understand what we're looking at. Well, I flew into that cloud. My plane dropped about 20 feet, and his head hit the ceiling. The plane was rocking, and I got on the other side of the cloud, and I called Center. I said, "Center, is there an airport close to me?" He said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Turn this direction and fly straight this direction. I'll give you a vector into that airport." I said, "I want to land there." So we went there and landed. When I landed, Brother Liniger said, "Brother Smith, I think you made the right decision." So I took him out to eat a nice seafood dinner. They loaned us a car at the FBO there, and we waited until the storm passed by, and went back to the airport, turned the car in, got my airplane, flew all the way to Oklahoma. Got there about 1 o'clock in the morning. From that time on, I went everywhere with Brother Liniger. Every time he went to Haiti, every time he went and visited churches, not every time that on a monthly basis that he came to like Little Rock, Wichita, and Olathe. But I went with him everywhere when it had to do with Haiti, and then there was a lot of things that happened. One of the things, I'll just tell y'all, maybe I better leave that out. It's not important for y'all to know. But Brother Linegar, if y'all remember, in 2002, Brother Linegar died in November. And in November, in that meeting in Jacksonville, Florida, this ministry was putting pressure on him, unbelievable pressure, concerning mostly the Haitian works. And so one night after the meeting, the night before he died, he said to me, he said, Brother Smith, do you know why? It wasn't the night after the meeting, it was between the two services, the day service. He said, do you know why they're putting this kind of pressure on me? And I said, well, sort of, but probably not clear. He said, they're putting this pressure on me because they know I'm going to turn Mission Voice and AT over to you. And they are not happy about that. And of course, the next night, when we got out of service, we went to a Burger King, just a little ways from the motel we were staying in. We ate a hamburger and some fries. Glenn Weiniger was driving his van. He had drove his van there. We had flown. But we were all staying in the Holiday Inn together. Not in the same room. Me and Brother Linegar were staying in the same room. Brother Weiniger was staying in a different room. When we pulled into the motel parking lot, Brother Linegar, I'll never forget this. He looked at us and he said, Brother, if I don't die before this meeting is over with, it'll be a miracle of God. That's the kind of pressure I feel in my body. He died 2 hours later in our room. Well, after of course, y'all may or may not remember, a couple years before that, I had started to work in the Dominican Republic. Brother Linegar went with me in a meeting and helped me. We even had a meeting over there. And he explained to these brethren how all that work came about. And I began to think Brother Linegar misunderstood God. And God put me with Brother Linegar to help get me in place to start to work in the Dominican Republic. And so I just thought, that was the purpose behind all of that. But there has so much happened since 2002 when Brother Linegar died, which has been 22 years ago. And most of y'all have heard about, if you don't know about, all the trouble that we have in Haiti. Right now, I'm talking about the natural trouble. The gangs taking over, all of the confusion. We've had like 200 churches over there. Many of them are destroyed. The house that Brother let me back up here just a little bit. Brother Nick Gruick, who started the work in Haiti, died in 1979. He started the work in 1967. He's over that 12 years. And after he died, 2 years went by. They didn't want any leadership in Haiti. And the brethren in Haiti went to Brother Linegar and asked him if he would take the oversight of Haiti. And so that in 1981, that was presented at Cornelius Mears' church in Los Angeles, California, in a ministers' meeting. And the brotherhood ordained Brother Linegar as the overseer of the Haitian works and Mission Boys. At that time, there were some works in America, in Florida, some in New York. Maybe there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 100, 101, 102, 103, 104, 105, 106, 107, 108, 109, 110, 111, 112, 113, 114, 115, 116, 117, 118, 119, 120, 121, 2 or 3 churches in Canada. There might have been another straggling work or 2 different places. There weren't too many works in America. That was when they put Brother Linger over Mission Voice in Haiti. In 2002, when he died, there's over 100 Haitian churches in America. And the work in Haiti had flourished. It had developed and grown a lot. I remember Brother Lineker raising the money to build Hogarth Lewis a church in New York. Many of the men in the body went there and helped build that building. The Brotherhood backed Brother Lineker, and they got that done. Of course, Brother Hogarth is a leading minister in that area now. There's probably 50 churches in that area. With all the trouble that's in Haiti, and even before that, for several years, we've been having Haitian ministers come to the Dominican Republic, and people that could legally move to Haiti from the body of Christ moved there, and Haitian churches have started there. But they didn't have much to do with me and the Dominican work, and our work together with them was limited. And one of the things is a lot of the teaching is different, you know. So Brother Lineker's teaching, they never really changed very much on any of his teaching from what Brother Rick taught. Now, with all the problems in Haiti, there's a lot more Haitians from the body coming to the Dominican work. And I've been reconsidering that Brother Linker did know what God was talking to him about. And I got my hands full with a lot of trying to mesh the Dominican work and the Haitians that are coming into the Dominican Republic. In fact, I'm not so sure that the bulk of the Haitian works in the body of Christ won't wind up in the Dominican Republic. I don't know exactly, you know, what the Lord is, and I've even considering that dream I had with all those wounded hands, I'm considering that has to do with the Haitian work. Anyway, I don't know exactly what all, you know, the Lord may unfold before it's all over with. But Elias called me with Brother Green this morning with a conference call, and when I went to the Dominican Republic, Brother Green it was just Brother Green that I had. And of course, he speaks fluent English and he interprets for me. And so in that first meeting, I believe Brother Jacob was the only one there. Was you the only one there with us, me and Sister Smith and you? You were in that meeting. We had 42 pastors in that meeting, and I was giving the history of this body, the falling away of the church, the restoration of the church, the history of Brother Souders, and Babylon, what Babylon means in the Bible, what it has to do with, the judgment of Babylon, and the work of the restored church in the end of this Gentile world. I don't know how much Jacob got out of it. I mean, I haven't talked to him too much. But I talked on some of those days for like 4 hours or longer. And I probably had the heaviest anointing I've ever had in my ministry. We got so high that I didn't know when I'd ever come down for days. It was unbelievable. Anyway, it's just God establishing that work. Elias Cyprian, he was pastoring a Nazarene church at the time, and Brother Green had invited him to come to this meeting. And so the day before the meeting started, Brother Green called him and said, "Are you coming to this meeting? I want you to come to this meeting." He said, "Yeah, I'll come." Well, that night he had a dream. He dreamed that he was standing in a big open park, and he saw an airplane coming, and it kept getting closer and closer, and coming down, down, down. And finally, he said that airplane was coming right at him, and it landed right in front of him. He said, but when it landed, it wasn't a plane; it was a green Jeep. Amazing, Emilio Green's name is Green. He was my interpreter. And there was a black man that got out of the Jeep. I was driving. There was a black brother in the Jeep with me. He got out of the Jeep and he walked over to Elias in the dream. And there was a car behind the Jeep attached to the car. And he said, "That car's yours, and here's the keys." And Elias took the keys. And he said, "I saw that man get back in the car with Brother Smith." And anyway, when he called this morning, he said, "I've been going over this dream because we got an issue in the Dominican Republic of how we ever going to get all this to mesh, where this all can work as one body of people." And I knew and I've known that Brother Emilio Green, Brother Elias Ciprian, and Brother Calderon are the three main leading men over there. They're all in the La Romana area. And, of course, we have about 15 churches now scattered over the Dominican. But when they called and they started talking about this, well, you know, they're interested in. Of course, I explained this dream that I had. Me and Brother Langers worked together to them, which they'd never heard all of it. So, anyway, I am reconsidering some things that it looks like, you know, I don't know how it all is going to unfold. I told my wife, I said, we may have to move over there. We just flat outright may have to move over there. There's just so much over there to do that I don't know if I can stay in America and finish what I've got to do there. We just got to wait and see. It's sort of amazing. There's a minister in this body that has been a great support and help financially to the Haitian work, which God has put in his heart recently. No, the Haitian work. He's been a tremendous, probably the biggest supporter of the Haitian work that there's ever been. But recently, God has put it in his heart to help me in the Dominican Republic. He doesn't know how to help Haiti. The gangs are there. In fact, we can't even get money to them. We don't know how to get help to them. Anyway, the Lord has seemed like God's doing something that's going to have to do with the Haitian work over there and the Dominican work. Somewhere or another, that's got to come closer together. Anyway, I just thought I'd give you all that history. At least you know where we're at now in the history of it. And so it's a big work that God has. I mean, we're just talking about the Haitian work. We're talking about thousands of people in the body of Christ in America and in Haiti. In Haiti, we probably have 6,000 people. I don't know. It's a big number of people. In America, I don't know. It's way over 10,000 people, I imagine. But anyway, I appreciate y'all keeping all of this in your prayers, you know.
I know y'all didn't ask necessarily to be a part of what Brother Liniger brought you in, or me, either one, but just so happened you were evidently chosen of God for that. So it's kind of like Sister Smith. I keep telling her, our ministry is what's important. All the natural things are necessary, but they're not of the same importance. Anyway, let's welcome and her family and then Brother Anthony and Des. We're glad y'all are here. Appreciate you being here. We would feel honored if God would touch your heart and cause you to be a working part of this church. We need everyone that God supplies with. We can't do anything with someone that God doesn't call. But if God calls you, then you'd be better off to answer the call of God than you would to try to reject it, because it's a great opportunity to have God to call you and to call you into His work of what He's doing. And we're living in the latter part of the Gentile world. Let me show you something. God worked with the Jews for 2,000 years, from the time He called Abraham until He sent Jesus, His Son, to this earth and started the New Covenant, the New Testament church, which was the culmination or the finished work of God among the Jewish people in that world, and that I'll call that the Jewish world. God finished that work, then He started all over with the Gentiles, and it is 2024 right now, and that work back there started in like AD 33. So we're just 9 years away from another 2,000-year world of the Gentiles. And look, from the time God created Adam until the time He called Abraham, on into the Moses, the law of Moses for the Jews. Those people aren't leaving because they're mad at what I'm saying. At least they better not be. But no, they're getting ready for band practice upstairs. Anyway, so God, the antediluvian world, the world before the flood, all the way up until Abraham and Moses' time, was 2,000 years. After that, from Abraham to Jesus Christ was another 2,000 years. That's 4,000 years. And we're now in another 2,000 years, almost finished, which is 6,000 years. Peter said, a day with the Lord is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is as a day. God created everything He created in 6 days. The seventh day He rested. That's 1,000 years for a day is 6,000 years. God's work will be finished in the end of this world, and we're down in the end of it. And people better get their eyes open and get focused on what God's going to do, because this will end in Armageddon. And God help your soul if you're not in God's work, serving God, before all that takes place. You don't want to be in God's destructive judgment. And so we're down in the end of the Gentile world. And then the seventh day is the 1,000-year millennium. That's the rest of God. That's when all men will finally quit doing their own will, their own works, and they'll enter into their rest. That's what the Sabbath had. That was a picture of the Sabbath of the Old Covenant. So our time is short. I don't know how many years exactly we have left, but we have several years left before God's final work in the end of the Gentile world. But we are down in the end of it, and it would behoove all of us to focus on God and what God is doing and get our eyes open to Him and His purpose. God has an eternal purpose, and He has a plan to save everyone that He can fit into that purpose, but he won't force it on anybody. But he will make it available if you can hear his call and he gives you an opportunity. It would behoove you to apply yourself to receive that. All right, we'll take a break and we'll go upstairs. We'll have church in about 30 minutes as soon as they finish the band practice. All right, God bless all of you. Thank you for listening. Mm-hmm.